Hello, I am Charmaine Smith, Executive Director of Gabby's Legacy Organization. Today we will have a webinar on grief during the holidays. For this webinar, I will give you some general information about our organization, Gabby's Legacy Organization, also known as GLO. I will introduce our speaker, Mrs. Natasha Smith. We will hear from her, and then I will give a closing. So a little bit about our organization. Our organization was started in May the 5th, 2021 in honor of my 12-year-old niece who had passed away from a rare brain tumor. And so one of her attributes or characteristics was that she was a very loving and caring and supportive young lady. And while she was alive, she started planning an organization that would give back to organizations that had given to her. And so we wanted to continue her legacy, and thus Gabby's Legacy Organization was born out of her initial concept. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to support cancer patients and their families by providing awareness about childhood cancers and providing these families with practical, emotional, and financial support. We currently serve Eastern North Carolina, and we really like to come alongside the families during their journey and assist them in any way that we can. And we make sure that our service projects that we do align with Gabby's story. So for this particular webinar, it aligns with our emotional support. And so we understand that the holiday season can be difficult for families, especially those who have lost a child. And that is why we wanted to provide this seminar. And so we hope that you all will gain some valuable information and insights to help you navigate this season. I'm pleased to introduce to you today Natasha Smith. She is a grief advocate, author, speaker, podcaster, and content creator. She is a wife and a mother who loves God. She has a heart for the hurting, and she has over 30 years of lived grief experiences. She has written a book, Can You Just Sit With Me? Healthy Grieving for the Losses of Life. She has had articles published with her view from home, Today's Parents, and Focus on the Family. For 12 years, she has posted on her personal website about faith and family at imnatashasmith.com. Please join me in welcoming Natasha Smith to help us discover how to grieve during the holidays.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Natasha Smith. I am a wife, mom, engineer turned homeschooler living in the grand old state of North Carolina. I'm an author of my new book, Can You Just Sit With Me? Healthy Grieving for the Losses of Life. And I've been writing on topics of family, faith, and grief for over 12 years. And I really do have a passion for those who are hurting, those who are grieving the losses of life, no matter what that loss is. And so I just want to thank Charmaine for that welcome and for that introduction, as well as Gabby's Legacy Organization for having me today and allowing me to spend a few moments with you to share about this important topic during the holidays. So grief during the holidays. And so I'm going to just go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen here. So grief during the holidays is what we will be spending some time on today. So a quick outline of what I'll be sharing today. What is grief and loss? What does holiday grief look like? What do you need to give yourself during the holidays? What are ways to cope with holiday grief? And then we'll conclude. So God knew that we would one day grieve, and so he sent us a comforter. I wanted to start with this quote from my book, just by way of saying, God knows, God sees, he hears, and he understands, and you are not alone. So I want to start this conversation and this webinar off with that truth, that God is with us. He knew that we will be in this very place, in this very moment, right now. and that you will be here listening to this webinar. And He wants you to know that He is comforter during this time. So let's go ahead and define what grief is. So, grief is normal. Most often, we hear that grief is the normal response to a loss. This definition kind of broadens or um, covers all the bases as it relates to loss and grief. So it says grief is a normal yet complex and innate human experience that stems from an undesirable event affecting not only our mental and physical well being, but also our spirit and overall quality of life. So each individual expresses grief in unique and personal ways, making it a multidimensional phenomenon. And this, again, this definition is taken from my book, Can You Just Sit With Me? Because I believe that it was so important to make sure we have a definition and a description of grief that really covers all the bases as it relates to our losses. And that brings me to this next slide of secondary losses. So when we lose our our loved ones, there are other losses that sometimes we don't take into account. There are many losses along with that loss that we actually face, and some of that, depending on who we lost, it could be loss of income, it could be loss of a support system, it could be a loss of our identity. You know, if we lose a child, we may lose or feel as if we lost that identity to relate as a mother. But I won't just stop right there just to say, even when we lose a loved one, we don't lose what they were to us or what they are to us. So when I lost a child, I didn't automatically not stop being a mother. We don't lose that association with those in whom we lost. If we lost a child, we're still a mother. If we lost a sister, we're still a sister. If we lost a parent, we're still a daughter or a son. So I wanted to make that point before I moved on. So more secondary losses that we experience, possibly a loss of faith. Sometimes our losses can shake us so much that there is a crisis of faith or a loss of faith there. Um, Loss of dreams for the future. When we experience the loss, that secondary loss. And again, secondary losses are those things like when we lose our loved ones, it kind of sometimes creates this domino effect of other losses or many losses, or what people may even call smaller losses. But the thing with loss is that all loss needs to be processed, all loss needs to be tended to, all loss needs to be expressed. And so I wanted to make sure I threw in this slide of secondary losses because you may be feeling that during this holiday time frame, and you may be thinking like, what is this? But it could be that you are experiencing some secondary losses because of the loss of your loved one. Okay. So the next slide I wanted to throw in here as well, this quote, that every loss is worthy of the space and grace to grieve. So especially when we're considering the loss of our loved one and then those secondary losses that we may be experiencing, especially around the holiday time frame, um, every loss, again, is worthy of the space and grace to grieve. And just in thinking about holiday grief in general is hard. It's just awfully hard no matter what time of the year. But what happens during the holidays is that our grief seems to be heightened because it's supposed to be the season of joy. It's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, but we may not be feeling as wonderful as those around us, or what the season is supposed to bring. And so, for one, I want to tell you that that is okay, and that it is absolutely normal to not feel this sense of bubbling, overflowing joy because you are grieving, and that is absolutely normal. So, what does holiday grief look like? Again, I want to say that grief is hard no matter what. Again, it is heightened during the holidays because it is a season where we tend to gather more. We tend to see our loved ones and connect with them more during the holidays. And so holidays seems extra, right? Extra rough, extra um burdensome. And so holiday grief can take on these many forms, and some of those forms are loneliness because again you're used to your loved ones being around. Holiday grief can take on the form of just fatigue. Grief is absolutely draining. I like to describe it sometimes um, as if you're something is plugged into you and it's literally sapping your energy, or as if you're walking around in concrete boots in quicksand. Sometimes it can feel that draining, so it can you can feel fatigued. um, Holiday grief can also look like or feel like sleep deprivation. Maybe you're having a hard time sleeping. It can also look like loss of appetite. You may have a hard time eating, which is, someone on the outside looking in is like, what's wrong with you? You're not eating the cake. You're not eating the turkey. You're not eating the ham. And if it may really be that you have even a loss of appetite. So those are some things to kind of look out for and know that it's normal. Like you're not abnormal if you experience these things because these are natural to grief. And then also, of course, a mixed bag of emotions, and that is also normal as well. You can go from being happy to sad to mad, or happy, hurting, and healing all at the same time, is how I like to put it, because we are made in the image of God and we have the great capacity to experience just a myriad of emotion. Like we can feel so many emotions and all at the same time. And before I read all the research and before I totally got to understand more about grief, I thought it was like, what is going on? I thought I was losing it. And I want to tell you, I am a witness that you are not losing it if you feel all these emotions all at once. It may feel like overwhelming, but I want to reassure you that you are absolutely normal, that you may experience a mixed bag of emotions during the holidays, especially during death dates, anniversaries, birthdays, all those days that connected you to your person, your loved one. And so I want to let you know that this is how holiday grief can look and show up during this time. And then what it may sound like. I like this because I took this. I posted this on one of my social media pages, and it resonated with so many within the Can You Just Sit With Me grief community. So, what does holiday grief sound like? And what it can sound like is, I wish you were here, right? We miss our person. And so, holiday grief on the inside, this is what's kind of like brewing on in our minds, like, I wish you were here. And it's okay to miss those that are no longer here. It's okay. It's normal. So I wish you were here. Things aren't the same since you've been gone. That is a normal grief response during this holiday time. It's normal to miss those and to say things are not the same. And then also there's so much I want to tell you. So if you resonate with any of those, that is absolutely normal. So then from Can You Just Sit With Me, this quote says, grieving can feel awkward because it goes against social norms, what you may have been taught or what you may have seen modeled. You may feel awkward and nervous to lean into your grief, not knowing where your emotions may lead. But God, who created you, fully knows who you are, and He knows how to handle all of you, including your emotions. So again, we may feel these myriad of emotions or just various emotions during this time, especially during the holidays, but know that that your grief is natural and it's normal, and it is heightened during this time frame. So what do you need during the holidays? Um, Four things we often overlook is a permission to grieve. often, kind of like what the quote was saying before, we don't give ourselves that permission. Like we feel like, okay, are you still sad about that? I should be over it by now. We have this negative self talk that we have going back and forth with ourselves, but we must give what you need during the holidays is to give yourself permission to grieve, because it is this again is the heightened time frame that you should indeed allow yourself time to grieve. And what that looks like, it just depends on you. If you want to cry, I love what a author, another writer friend, said on a podcast that I recently had with her, and she said God made us with the ability to grieve, to cry. Like it's naturally within us. If we move our mind out of the way, the process will like naturally happen. We would cry, we would rest, we would give our bodies what it needs to do what it naturally knows to do. So this is just kind of reminding you to give yourself permission to grieve. If you feel like crying, cry. If you want to write it out, write it out. But give yourself that permission. The next thing is self compassion. And I want to kind of almost lump these together: self compassion, love, and empathy. So these are things that we, most often as grievers, we like give them freely over to other people, but it's hard to give them to ourselves. And so I want to remind you to give yourself some compassion, some love, and some empathy towards yourself. And I know for me, this kind of falls in line with what am I telling myself? Like, what is my self talk? Am I said, don't cry? Am I telling myself not to cry? Am I telling myself to be strong? Am I telling myself, like, don't think like that? So that self compassion, love, and empathy is going to show up a lot in our own thoughts. What are we telling ourselves? And so, how we would show compassion, love, and empathy to others who are grieving in the holidays, make sure that we do the same for ourselves. Then, coping during the holidays, here are 5 questions that I want you to consider. How am I really doing? And I want you to honestly ask yourself this question and honestly answer this question. How am I really doing? Number 2, do I need to set boundaries? 3, are there things I need to say no to? Like, how many holiday parties do you have lined up? How many invites do you have to go to? Certain things that may seem overwhelming during this time frame. Number 4, will I keep old traditions or make new ones? This is a hard one. Even for me this year, it just seemed so extra hard not to think about the way that things used to be. And so just honestly ask yourself this question and honestly answer it. And just know that it's okay if you want to try to keep the old. It's okay if you want to make new ones. It's again extending ourselves the grace that we would give to others and that God gives to us, that we would give it to ourselves. And then number 5, who is my support system? Ask yourself that. Who is my support system? And do I need to reach out for help? And so I was actually thinking about this today, and it was so powerful. The thought that came to me is how sometimes we feel like we don't need anybody or we don't need any support. And I thought about the scene of Jesus on the Dolorosa, his path along to the cross, where he is carrying his cross, and then someone from the crowd comes to help him carry the cross. So even Jesus, in his time of need and distress, needed someone to come alongside him and help him. So please answer that question honestly. And if you need more support and if you need more help, whether it is by way of a safe person, a safe community, or even a counselor or therapist, please reach out for help during this time frame. And then creating a holiday grief plan. There's a saying that says, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So we are not feeling this holiday season. I want you to create a holiday grief plan. And these are some things that you can consider in your planning. Will there be plan for ways to honor your new capacity? Again, if you think about the boundaries that I talked about earlier about setting boundaries, how can you, what type of boundaries do you need to set? You know, it, in this loss, does it pain you to be around newborns? You know, does it pain you to be around babies at this time? Um, then don't, you know, it's like really, really honoring your new capacity. Because the thing about it is, I think sometimes we think we need to be strong and we need to act a certain way because we just do. But the thing about it is, we as grievers, you need to just be able to protect your peace and protect your mental health at this time. So honor your new capacity. Answer those questions that we talked about in the last slide, and then consider these 4 points when making your holiday grief plan. So the next one is to create or continue rituals. And what I mean by that is, is there something that you used to do that you will continue to do? Again, that's kind of going back to those old versus and new or new traditions, or is there something new that you would like to do to even honor your loved ones? For me, I started last year around Christmas time lighting candles for those who had passed away or those who are gone. And so to me, that was special to me because then I was able to include our kids in saying, this is for, your Aunt Sharon, your Aunt Angie, this is for your granddad. I could include them. So that was a new ritual that I incorporate, just to help with the holiday grief in remembering and honoring the loved ones while kind of making space for grief as well. And then the next one is tending to your grief. So we have to make space for the grief. Again, I love to say that grief needs a place to go. And so, whether that is, again, writing it out, talking it out with a safe person, grief needs a place to go and it needs space to, um, we have to make space for it. And basically, what that means, because I used to think you had to be alone to make space for grief, but that's not true because you can incorporate and do things with other people that can honor that grief. So, whether making space means you need to set up an appointment with a counselor because that's the only way that you can kind of talk it out with a safe person, then that's fine. Or joining a community, a grief community. I know I created a space, Can You Just Sit With Me grief community, where we can kind of dialogue about loss and grief. I say to find your people. You want to um, have people supporting you and surrounding you that have a sense of what it means to have experienced loss and grief. So tending to your grief. And then the last thing you want to have in your plan is rest. Self-care plus soul care. So self-care, making sure you're getting that rest, because again, that fatigue that we may be feeling extra during this holiday time frame, and that soul care, whether it's by way of praying and reading the Bible, fellowshipping with other believers, meditating on the Word of God, listening to the Word of God, because sometimes reading may be hard for you, and so listening to the Bible, listening to podcasts, or listening to even YouVersion to read the Bible to you, listening to worship music and uplifting music, even Christmas music, something uplifting. And as well as I love affirmations. I do a lot of daily affirmations on my Instagram as well, and they've been really helping me during this season. So when you're considering creating um, a holiday grief plan, consider these things. And so, in concluding our time together, I want you to remember that you are not alone. Holiday grief can be so hard. again, because it just kind of brings back so many memories and so many things can be so triggering. But I want you to remember that you are not alone, that grief is indeed natural and it is normal, and that grief takes time. And so if you find yourself even at the next holiday season and you feel the same, you are not alone. And it is absolutely normal and natural because grief takes time. And so I want you to also remember to, again, give yourself grace. And so that concludes our time together. This is my book, Can You Just Sit With Me? Healthy Grieving for the Losses of Life, which is a gentle guide and companion for you along your grief journey. And so I invite you to take a look at that and let it help you along your journey. The thing about grief is that we don't have to do it alone. It's very hard, and I don't recommend you doing it alone. So again, let this be a gentle guide and companion for you. So thanks so much for your time. I pray that you will have a peaceful and hopeful and holiday. I pray that this has been helpful for you during this time. And I just pray God's peace and blessings over you. Thanks.
We want to thank Natasha for that inspirational message. We hope that you have some valuable information that you can take with you to help you as you navigate this season. One of the things that I found very insightful for me is allowing myself permission to grieve. And so I want to thank you for that, Natasha. I want to thank you for your message. And I just hope that our families have gained something that can help take them through this holiday season. If you would like to learn more about GLO and what we do and how we support families, you can reach us at glo@gabbyslegacy.org. Please feel free to share any other support that you feel that you need that we can potentially assist you with. If you'd like to learn more about who we are and what we do, you can reach us at www.gabbyslegacy.org. I am Charmaine Smith from Gabby's Legacy Organization, and on behalf of the team at GLO, we want you all to have a blessed and happy holiday season. Take care.